We should all do something to right the wrongs that we see and not just complain about them. The first time you marry for love, the second for money, and the third for companionship. If you want things to be right, you have to do them yourself. If you produce one book, you will have done something wonderful in your life. I am a woman above everything else. You must continue. Poets are the ones who change the world. You are an atypical husband, increasingly so in one way or another every year since we've been married, so you mustn't be surprised to have an atypical wife. He didn't even have the satisfaction of being killed for civil rights. It had to be some silly little communist. I have been through a lot and have suffered a great deal. But I have had lots of happy moments, as well. Every moment one lives is different from the other. History, it's what those bitter old men write. One should always dress like a marble column. We are the only country in the world that trashes its old buildings. Too late we realize how very much we need them. You cannot separate the good from the bad. And perhaps there is no need to do so, either. There will be great presidents again, but there will never be another Camelot. I know everyone says married couples should never separate, as you get off the same wavelength. It is true you do, but I think it is usually good when we go away from each other as we both realize so much. If you cut people off from what nourishes them spiritually, something in them dies. A great goal in life is the only fortune worth finding. Now, I think that I should have known that he was magic all along. So now, he's a legend when he would have preferred to be a man. You have to have been a Republican to know how good it is to be a Democrat. If you bungle raising your children, I don't think whatever else you do matters very much. There are many little ways to enlarge your child's world. Love of books is the best of all. I'll be a wife and mother first, then First Lady. Pearls are always appropriate. The greatest responsibility is your children. If my children turned out badly, I'd feel that nothing I had done was worthwhile. Once you can express yourself, you can tell the world what you want from it. All the changes in the world, for good or evil, were first brought about by words. I think the major role of the First Lady is to take care of the President so that he can best serve the people. And not to fail her family, her husband, and children. I want to live my life, not record it. I want minimum information given with maximum politeness. Americans care about their past, but for short-term gain they ignore it and tear down everything that matters. You have to be doing something you enjoy. That is a definition of happiness. A newspaper reported I spent $30,000 a year buying Paris clothes and that women hate me for it. I think my biggest achievement is that after going through a rather difficult time I consider myself comparatively sane. Being away from home gave me the chance to look at myself with a jaundiced eye. The trouble with me is that I'm an outsider. And that's a very hard thing to be in American life. He's like my father in a way, loves the chase and is bored with the conquest, and once married needs proof he's still attractive, so flirts with other women and resents you. What is sad for women of my generation is that they weren't supposed to work if they had families. What were they going to do when the children are grown? Watch the raindrops coming down the window pane. It's so good in a way to write all this down and get it off your chest, because I never do really talk about it with anyone, but poor you has to read it. Maybe it will end very happily, Or maybe since he's this old and set in his ways and cares so desperately about his career, he just won't want to give up that much time to extracurricular things like marrying me. Aristotle Onassis rescued me at a moment when my life was engulfed with shadows. He brought me into a world where one could find both happiness and love. All I ask is someone with a little imagination, but they are hard to find. Just make sure no one has exactly the same dress I do. I want all of mine to be original and no fat little woman hopping around in the same dress. You have only one chance to raise your child. The one thing I do not want to be called is First Lady. It sounds like a saddle horse. Would you notify the telephone operators and everyone else that I'm to be known simply as Mrs. Kennedy and not as First Lady? Dear God, please take care of your servant John Fitzgerald Kennedy. An editor becomes kind of your mother. You expect love and encouragement from an editor. I will tell you one thing. They will never drag me out like a little old widow like they did Mrs. Wilson when President Wilson died. I will never be used that way. The river of sludge will go on and on. It isn't about me. I learned not to be ashamed of a real hunger for knowledge, something I had always tried to hide, and I came home glad to start in here again with a love for Europe that I am afraid will never leave me. A camel makes an elephant feel like a jet plane. Even though people may be well known, they still hold in their hearts the emotions of a simple person for the moments that are the most important of those we know on earth: birth, marriage, death. One must not let oneself be overwhelmed by sadness. Can anyone understand how it is to have lived in the White House and then, suddenly, to be living alone as the president's widow? The only routine with me is no routine at all.